To the chairwoman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gill. Mr. Stone, I'd like to ask you specifically, in talking with you earlier, you mentioned 3 women that were witnesses that had their testimonies omitted by the Warren Commission in regards to seeing Oswald in the book Depository. Can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yes, it's a very interesting piece of information that we put into our documentary, JFK Revisited. It came out of the AR. It came out of the ARB, or it came out from...
I'm not sure if it...
Anyway...
It came out in recent years.
It came out in recent years around that time. Barry Ernst wrote about it and was interviewed in our film, in which he says that in addition to... There were 3 women on the 4th floor who, during the time of the assassination, they witnessed it from above, and immediately they were headed down to see what was going on at a closer angle. 2 of the women went downstairs quickly. The 3rd woman, Dorothy Garner, who was a supervisor, an older woman, watched them go down the stairs. They were down, all this happened within 30 seconds. Oswald was if he was on the 6th floor, which I sincerely doubt, had to be a track star to store the weapon, to run across the floor and go down those same stairs, and appear as he did to Marion Baker in the 2nd floor lunchroom. All of this was highly unlikely, and I think that should be addressed. 2 of the women are still alive.
No, Victoria Adams passed away. I think Sandy Stiles is still alive. The Garner, it's called the Stroud document, and it has Garner's testimony in it. All right. This was discovered by writer Barry Ernst in 1999 as a result of the ARB. All right. And it turned out that the Texas Attorney General, Stroud, had talked to Garner, the supervisor, and sent this information to the Warren Commission in the summer of 1964. But you won't find it in any of the Warren Commission volumes, even though it's a kind of important piece of evidence, because Garner said that, she never saw Oswald on the stairs, and the 2 girls went down before the policeman and the supervisor, Roy Truly, came up. So it's very hard to believe that Oswald was tearing down those stairs, and this woman never saw him.
Mr. Oswald, Mr. Stone, sorry, lots of Oswald today. Mr. Stone, one of my last questions for you before we wrap up this hearing. Would you recommend that the task force send a letter requesting NBC make a clear copy of the film?
Certainly, that'd be very interesting. Mr. D. Eugenio and I saw a film of a potential Oswald watching the motorcade go by, which means that he was downstairs at the time of the shooting, and that would be very interesting to see. We couldn't say for sure that was Oswald, but it's a man who looks like him. So I think it would be a very good idea for the task force to subpoena NBC, which has the original film.
Yes, they supposedly have the original, yeah.
They have the original film. They've refused it twice to be shown.
Yes.
And if this task force could easily get that, and the American public should have a right to judge for itself who was standing there.
First of all, I would like to thank our witnesses for being here today. There are those in our country who may ask why this task force seeks to pursue the truth underlying the facts surrounding the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963. And the answer to that is the truth. Even the truth delayed and justice, even justice delayed, is always worth attaining. And the men and women who have sought answers regarding the assassination of the American President John F. Kennedy for all the world to see have been obstructed and hampered by our own government for over 60 years. This hearing is not meant to provide a definitive explanation of the Kennedy assassination. This hearing demonstrates, however, that the CIA and other components of the federal government have not been honest with the American people that they are meant to serve up until recent efforts. and the American people must hold these agencies accountable, and they can. I've invited Mr. Stone, a filmmaker, to this hearing because he did just that, motivating Congress in the 1990s to pass a law that began the declassification process. And I'd like to applaud our president for continuing this process as he promised to do so. Researchers like Mr. Morley and Mr. DiEugenio have provided new information that helped bring light to some of the darkest days in American history. And I would like to thank the witnesses again and applaud their work. The search for truth continues, and the task force will pursue this at any price. I'd also like to note that we are planning on sending a letter to NBC requesting what you've recommended, Mr. Stone. Before I wrap it up, I would just like to say, do you guys have any statements in closing for the American people?
I would just like to thank you, Chairwoman Luna, for your aggressive, action-oriented approach to this issue. While we diverge politically, it's been a pleasure to work with you, and your leadership is important on this. Like I said before, I think we are making progress.
Thank you. Mr. Stone or Mr. DiEugenio?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I really admire what you're doing, and I wish you the best of success.
Mr. DiEugenio?
I think one of the things that the committee should do is talk to some of the people who were on the ARB, so you can understand just how difficult it was for them and why they couldn't complete their job. All right, I certainly hope that this committee does complete that job, and finally, 62 years later, we'll know everything the government did know about the. One thing that the gentleman down here asked about, see, very few people know there were 3 attempts on JFK's life in November, okay? There was one in Chicago, there was one in Tampa, and then there was the successful one, in Dallas. The Chicago attempt so much resembles what happened in Dallas that if the Secret Service would have given all those records over, okay, then the Dallas one might have been prevented. At the one in Tampa, that one, there was just the opposite of Dallas. You had wall-to-wall Secret Service, FBI, et cetera. And Kennedy was so happy that he got away, that he stayed after at the Floridian Hotel and insisted on shaking hands with every single officer that was involved in that attempt, all right? So these are some of the records that are still out there.
Thank you very much, Mr. DiEugenio. And Mr. Davidson?
I'll just thank you again for the opportunity to testify and to encourage the task force again to take all steps possible